Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy interview guidance program. Since yesterday, past few days, we have been discussing and analyzing the detailed application form, the relevance of the content or the aspects which you mention in the detailed application form, especially the employment status, hobbies, interests, the awards, medals you have got, and also the employment status, the district and the city where you come from, the relevance of optional. Now, apart from all those things, current events, the issues which are in news are very important for interview. Okay, as I have already told you, around 40% of your personality test is especially based on the current events which are happening around or across the world. So they'll ask you about the national, international and regional issues which are very much relevant for the exam. Now, from today onwards in these sessions, we will be discussing few current events. They are particularly relevant for the personality test. Okay, so they are very important for the UPSC personality test. Now, few of you after the mains examination, you may not be following these current events. Okay, so you may be following these current events especially after your selection or after you're selected for the interview. So what about few important current events or current topics like 33% of reservation which is given to the women in legislature, both parliament and the state legislatures. Okay, so in addition to the 33% reservation which is given to women in the local bodies. Now, apart from that, recent discussions on the national security doctrine, national security strategy, and the same-sex marriage. So everything will be discussed in these sessions. So the overall objective of this session is to equip you with adequate skill to address any question, so to answer any question which is asked in your personality test based on these current events, right? So in these sessions we will be discussing few topics in a multi-dimensional manner. Okay, so we will be discussing different dimensions of one topic, so that you can understand those topics in a very clear and comprehensive manner, right? So yesterday's classes I have emphasized on the importance of newspapers. I have already told you that how important newspapers are exactly, right? So for personality test you have to read at least 1 or 2 newspapers regularly. So therefore we will be covering these current events from the newspapers itself, right? So the first aspect that we are going to discuss today is about the national security strategy, right? So we have set of issues, set of current events, right? So the experts have been suggesting that India should have a national security doctrine like a US. Now if you look at US have a national security doctrine, but India don't have such a national security doctrine. Now in this context, especially India has been aspiring to become a global power. So there are a lot of challenges that India has been facing. So in this context, the experts have been suggesting that India should have a national security doctrine. Now, if you look at this image, the components of the national security doctrine, so it consists of multiple components. Okay, so I can say it is a multi-diverse because it involves the geopolitical and geostrategic aspects of a nation. Okay, so if you look at India geopolitically, geostrategically, what are the threats, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges that India has been facing will be discussed as part of the national security strategy. Now, apart from the national security doctrine will also takes into consideration the good governance, because through good governance you can develop the trust and confidence of the citizens towards the government, and that is very important for the peaceful and progressive society. Now apart from that, the political issues are also very important, right? So the political stability is very important and it is a key component of security in any nation. Now if you look at the African countries, why they are unstable because there's a lack of political stability in those countries. Even if you look at the Middle East countries, there's a lack of political stability in those countries. Now, apart from that, the socio-economic issues will also play a key role in deciding the national security or defining the national security doctrine of any country. Now, when we talk about the socio-economic issues, illiteracy, poverty, child marriages, caste discrimination, and the communal violence, everything will be considered as part of the socio-economic aspects, and socio-economic aspects also constitute a key component of national security doctrine. Now, apart from that, we need to consider about the military angle, the border management, since India have a huge borders, the police and the security forces, intelligence, and the cyber security. So these are the main components of the national security doctrine. So they mainly define the national security doctrine of a country. Now, after that, we need to talk about the reservation for women in politics. So recently, a legislation was passed by the parliament where the objective of this legislation is to provide 33% of reservation for women in the legislature and parliament as well. Okay, so now in this context, it is, a much anticipated bill. Right? So, women have fought for this bill since women particularly lack the political representation. So women empowerment is very often linked with the empowerment of women in politics or representation of women in politics. It is very important. So UPSC will definitely ask questions on the reservation which is provided for the women, the 33% of the reservation and its significance on women empowerment. And after that, there's another very dynamic issue, that is climate change and its impact on agriculture and food security. So we all know that climate change has led to an existential crisis for the human being and entire life on this planet, and climate change will significantly impact the agriculture and even the food security as well. So therefore, in this context, we will also understand the relation between climate change and the food security. So it is also one of the favorite topic which is continuously repeated by the UPSC board members. Climate change is of course a very hot topic, and definitely they will ask questions from this. So firstly, we need to talk about the national security doctrine. Now, when you faced a question that what exactly is the national security doctrine, right? Not all the countries have a national security doctrine. So very few countries have a national security doctrine. Now, US has a national security doctrine. Similar to US, the experts in India are also suggesting that India should possess one such national security doctrine. So now, what is this national security doctrine? So it is actually a concept that has been devised or formulated by the government of the day. Okay, now the government of the day taking into different aspects. Okay, so different aspects like security, the development, everything will be taken into the consideration. So these things will, the overall objective of considering these things is to ensure or protect the state and its citizens against all kinds of threats and crises. Okay, so the overall objective of the national security doctrine is to protect the state and its citizens against all kinds of national crises and the threats and challenges. Okay, so what kind of threats? For example, insurgency, terrorist attack, these are the threats. Okay, so national security doctrine will protect the state and its citizens. How it protects? It protects through a variety of means of power projection. For example, we talk about soft power, we talk about hard power. Now, countries like India use soft power. Okay, so it is evident in India's efforts in Central Asia and African countries. On the other hand, there are countries who use hard power. For example, US uses hard power. Right, so a variety of means of power projection, such as the political power projection, military power projection, and the economic power, diplomacy. So everything will be considered, or everything will be taken into consideration to protect the state and protect its citizens, and this is what the national security doctrine. So I hope you understood the concept of national security doctrine. So by this definition of national security doctrine, you can imagine how significant or how important this doctrine for a country like India. So it is unfortunate that we do not have such national security doctrine. So it actually provides a guide, a direction, a clear path through which we can conduct a policy. Okay, for an aspiring country like India, it is very important. Now, why do we need a national security doctrine? That is the second question that we need to deal with it. So why do we need a national security doctrine? So as of now, we do not have such national security doctrine. Now, if you look at India's internal security framework, we have been facing a lot of challenges. For example, the militancy that we have been facing in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, apart from militancy, we have also been facing the problem of insurgency in the northeast. Okay, so and the secessionist movements in states like Punjab, the Khalistani movement, and the terrorist attacks. Now, when we talk about the terrorist attack, 26/11. So this was the terrorist attack that India has faced. That is one of the worst terror attacks that India has ever faced. Now, apart from that, there are Uri terror attack, Pathankot airbase terror attacks. So in order to deal with all those challenges, we need a comprehensive national security doctrine. Now, with the national security doctrine, what generally happens, there will be a coordination between different agencies. Okay, so different establishments. For example, we have research and analysis wing, we have intelligence bureau, we have paramilitary forces, defense forces, and the central agencies and the state governments, right? So it ultimately envisions a coordinated approach between all these agencies. Because of this reason, we require a national security doctrine. So when we have a national security doctrine, we can protect the state and its citizens against all kinds of the threats. Okay, so that is why we need a national security doctrine. However, there were attempts towards creation of or strengthening national security. So what were those efforts? The first effort that we need to discuss is about the National Security Council. Okay, you very often hear about the National Security Advisor. Now, the National Security Advisor, NSA, is Shri Ajit Doval sir. Okay, generally the National Security Advisor, NSA, heads the National Security Council. Now, what is the role of the National Security Council? Okay, so earlier this was an attempt to strengthen the national security. Now, what was the role of National Security Council? It generally advises the Prime Minister. Okay, so National Security Council advises the Prime Ministers on matters of national security and strategic interest. For example, India as a country have certain strategic interest. For example, protection of sea lanes of communication is very important for India's external trade. Protection of India's energy security is very important when it comes to Middle East. Protection of diaspora in the Middle East is very important. That is a strategic interest for India. Now, apart from that, national security, insurgency, militancy, and left-wing extremism. So all those things, any issue on all those things can be advised to the Prime Minister by the National Security Council. So this is the overall role of the National Security Council. So however, it is generally said that it has not lived up to its expectations. So why it has not lived up to its expectations? Because there's lack of coordination. Okay, and it has been working in isolation. It has been working in an independent manner without any coordination with the other central government agencies and the intelligence agencies and even the state government security agencies. Because of this reason, it has not lived up to its expectations over a period of time. Now, after that, we need to talk about the nuclear doctrine. So nuclear doctrine that was created in 1999. Now, if you have the political science and international relations optional, and not just optional, but if you have a basic idea about India's nuclear doctrine. So India's nuclear doctrine that was devised in the year 1999, and India generally follows the no first use policy nuclear doctrine. Okay. India's nuclear doctrine is no first use. So what does this exactly mean, right? So India will never use nuclear weapons at first instance, right? India will never use nuclear weapons in first instance. However, if any country attacks India with the nuclear weapons, our retaliation is defined as a massive retaliation. Okay, so our retaliation will be massive retaliation. We can use all our nuclear weapons against that particular state. So what is the reason for a massive retaliation is because have a minimum deterrence. Okay, so it deter the enemy adversary country that okay, so there will be a mutually assured destruction if we use nuclear weapons against India. Okay, so this is known as minimum credible nuclear deterrence. This is what exactly India follows. Now, if you look at India's neighborhood, India is in a complex neighborhood. So we have Pakistan on our western side, we have China. So both are nuclear armed states. So therefore, in this context, India having nuclear weapons, or India should possess nuclear weapons, and India using the no first use policy actually defines India as a peaceful country. Okay, so it uses nuclear weapons for the peaceful purposes only. Now, how will the national security doctrine actually look like? Okay, so how it will actually look like? Now, it actually comprises of both national security doctrine as well as national security strategy. So it is a healthy synthesis of both. So they cannot work in an independent manner. Okay, so national security doctrine consists of both this doctrine as well as the national security strategy. Now, if we can define the national security doctrine, so what is the definition and the difference between both of these things? So firstly, if you understand the national security doctrine, so this encompasses a wide variety of areas. Okay, so it encompasses the totality of the country's military, diplomatic, economic and social policies. Okay, so it encompasses different policies that will protect and promote country's national security interests. Right, so it is not just about one particular aspect. For example, it not takes into account only military or intelligence aspect. Rather, it is a comprehensive and a holistic doctrine. It takes into consideration every aspect. For example, economic, social policies, diplomatic, military, cybersecurity, socio-economic issues. So everything will be taken into consideration. So that comprehensive doctrine is known as national security doctrine. Now, after that, we have a national security strategy. What does the national security strategy means? So it must include the command and control structures. Okay, it is very simple. So it is just a command and control center to meet any eventuality. For example, any terrorist attack or any insurgency related attempt or any disaster. So it deals with those things. Okay, so however, the national security doctrine is much more broader. Okay, the national security strategy is very simple and it is narrow, confined to specific areas. So it is very important that you have to understand the difference between national security doctrine and national security strategy. Now, after that, what is the significance of national security doctrine? Okay, so first you need to understand what exactly is the national security doctrine. And after that, why India requires a national security doctrine. And after that, you should also write about you should also understand the significance of the national security doctrine. So if in fact, national security doctrine plays a most important and most crucial role in internal security. How? So for example, this national security doctrine will help in prompt and relevant decision making. Okay, so prompt and relevant decision making is very, very important. For example, for a country like India, right? Whenever there's a terrorist attack or whenever there's an insurgency attempt, you have to take decisions in a quicker manner. So that is consistent with the national security strategy, the existing national security strategy. Okay, so however, the national security doctrine actually provides a clear path. It actually provides a clear direction. So it works like a guide. So because of this reason, the national security doctrine will help us take a prompt and relevant decisions. So after that, the national security doctrine will also help us maintaining the proper coordination. Okay, so the proper coordination between different agencies was also very important, and that is lacking currently, whether it is with the National Security Council or with the national security strategy. Okay, so proper coordination with the different agencies. For example, at the central level we have the paramilitary forces, defense forces, and the intelligence agencies and National Security Council. And from the with the center and the state security agencies. So it ensures a proper coordination among these security establishments, both at the central and state level. So therefore, there will be an intelligence sharing. Okay, so there will be a sharing of capacities among these agencies or the establishments that could prevent terrorist attacks. So that ensures peace and security of the country. Now after that, when we have a national security strategy, we can hold these institutions more and more accountable. So that is very important, right? For example, when a security agency failed in its attempt to combat a terrorist attack, then when we have a national security doctrine, we can hold them accountable why they failed, and we can identify the existing shortcomings, we can identify the challenges, thereby responding in an appropriate manner or fixing those loopholes. So because of that reason also, national security doctrine is very important. So therefore, overall, if we talk about the national security doctrine, so it ultimately ensures a peaceful, prosperous India, a progressive India. So that is what forms a conducive conditions for the economic growth and economic development of our country. So as a rising superpower, as an economic superpower, this is what India requires. Okay, so this is how you need to justify why India require a national security doctrine, right? So this is all about the national security doctrine, and in coming lectures we will be discussing about different current events. They are very much relevant. So if you carefully understand those things, so you will develop an overall idea about them, and you can answer the questions which are asked by the board members. So that's all for this session, and thank you.